We are born to survive in a world full of dangers. Hardship makes us stronger. We dream the impossible and make them real. But our accomplishments aren't made without struggles. And through those struggles, new fates, new futures are born. With the horrors of the Vietnam War still instilled in the American people, many counterculture movements for fairness and equality surged during the late 1900s. Among those movements is Deaf President Now, or DPN, which was a student protest in March 1988 at Gallaudet University, Washington, D.C. The university, established by an act of Congress in 1864 to serve the deaf, had always been led by a hearing president. The protest began on March 6, 1988, when the Board of Trustees announced its decision to appoint a hearing person as its seventh president. This movement began its roots to the development of ASL.
ASL is a virtual language that deaf and hard of hearing people use to communicate with. Now, ASL is not a virtual language. It has different signs in different countries and regions. Now, ASL is recognized as the backbone for deaf culture. Now, deaf culture, it means so much more than anything else to deaf people. It's their social beliefs, their values. It's a lifestyle that they live through every day.
Not only did ASL develop a connection among the deaf community to communicate and connect with others in similar condition, but the university also brought up the realities and strengths deaf people through education meant for them. The Gallaudet University was named after Thomas Hopkins Gallaudet, an important figure in the advancement of deaf education who himself was not deaf. The Act of Congress established Gallaudet in 1864, and President Abraham Lincoln signed its charter. Gallaudet University was originally for both deaf and blind children. It was the first school for the advanced education of the deaf and hard of hearing in the world and remains the only higher education institution that has programs and services which are specifically designed to accommodate deaf and hard of hearing students. Gallaudet University is officially bilingual, with American Sign Language and English used for instruction and by the college community.
ASL was being continued at Gallaudet, but they weren't being fully represented. They were being discriminated, whether they were being judged for mentally incapable or broken or any kind of discrimination at all. Gallaudet was supposed to be the one place of not being discriminated or judged. They all were supposed to be together and united as deaf people. And they wanted that representation at that one school where they all were supposed to belong.
The roots of such discrimination began in the early 19th century when in 1880 an international meeting of educators of deaf people in Milan, Italy banned the use of sign language in the teaching of deaf children. This decision led to the expulsion of deaf teachers from most classrooms because it was believed deaf teachers were not competent enough to either teach in or administer schools for deaf children. Alexander Graham Bell, an oralist, and other hearing people thought they knew what was best for deaf people and strongly advocated the suppression of sign language usage inside and outside the classroom. Edward Gallaudet, on the other hand, ultimately supported the continued use of sign language at the college. Discrimination still persisted throughout the 20th century, and along with other counterculture movements, the protest arose when the students proposed that a deaf president should be elected of Gallaudet University, and the board responded by not only rejecting, but also degrading the mental capabilities of deaf people. The protest then elongated to 8 days of hard work and motivation to give the deaf the equality they deserve. Day 1. The Board of Trustees refused to announce the new president in person. This enraged the students, and they marched to the Mayflower Hotel to see the head of the Board of Trustees, Elizabeth Zinsser, and board chair, Jane Spillman, and protest this act. They both claimed that deaf people cannot function in the hearing role, which brought even more tension and distress. Day 2. The students demanded 4 criterion to be enacted in order for them to stop protesting. 1. Zinsser must resign and a deaf president elected. 2. Spillman must resign from the board. 3. The percentage of deaf members on the Board of Trustees must be increased to at least 51%. 4. There must be no reprisals against any of the protesters. Day 3. Brigida Bourne, Jerry Covell, Greg Philibrook, and Tim Raru, who were all hard of hearing or deaf people, gave motivating speeches to support the movement. Day 4. Police showed up and intervened in the movement as the protesting has started to become violent and more demanding. Day 5. The movement has spread even more and is now on the news channel as television is beginning to play as a major role in this movement. Zinsser resigns that night as support for the movement increases. Day 6 and 7, more riots, protests, and spreading the word took place throughout the community. This is the climax as the students continue to march for the rights of the deaf. Day 8. Decisions of the board have been made. Spillman had resigned. Bravin was named the next chair of the Board of Trustees. A task force would be set up to determine the best way to achieve a 51% majority on the board. No reprisals, and Dr. I. King Jordan was named 8th president and first deaf president of Gallaudet University. Victory has been attained. Years after the movement of DPN, the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. Discrimination upon Americans with any disability was prohibited. DPN has impacted many fields of study and opened up new opportunities for many. DPN has also affected entertainment through television and films. Many educational programs dedicated to the deaf are also apparent throughout America. DPN's impact was also international. In the last few years, several other countries have established collegiate programs for deaf students, including Japan, Sweden, and South Africa. DPN not only opened the minds of people suffering from hearing well, but at the same time, the movement was a strong reminder to deaf and hard of hearing people that they did not have to accept limitations put on them by others. Although discrimination is apparent in today's world, it is minuscule compared to 3 decades ago, and indeed, DPN instilled a deep sense of pride and accomplishment in deaf and hard of hearing people of all ages and from all walks of life. Since 1988, more and more deaf students are graduating from many colleges and are entering professions that were previously considered off limits to deaf and hard of hearing people. A record number of deaf people are entering professions previously closed to them, such as owning their own businesses, law, and medicine. DPN inspired many to reach beyond to the extent where having disability does not mean loss of hope, but a challenge to overcome and reach success.